Welcome back to another episode of Pirkei Avos, live with Rabbi Chaim Coffman in Israel. It's always a pleasure to be with Rabbi Coffman. He's teaching us the ethics of the fathers. It's a joy. It's something everybody needs. It's something that everybody can benefit and begin to apply. Now, last week we promised we weren't going to get into any politics. It got a little, a little long, a little heated. It was great. There was so much there, especially for this day and age. I'm hoping today's class is going to be just as good, but we got to keep it to 2 hours, Rabbi, because I got Rabbi Poston coming on afterwards. Always a pleasure to be with you, Rabbi. You're now live.
Always a pleasure to be here. You know what you can do. If I go too long, just speed it up. So, you have these videos go on.
More bunnies.
We're not going to, get into politics, but they've had all these, discussions in front of these state legislatures for hours. 6 hours, 8 hours, 10 hours. Who's got 10 hours to watch it? Watching double speed half the time. Wish I could watch it in quadruple speed. Just to hear it. But yeah, we're gonna keep it to hopefully 2 hours. And we are not, isn't that true? We are not going to speak about politics, right? That's the.
I think it was in the Mishnah,
that's the goal. But if politics has to do with current events and ethics. Okay, so maybe, we'll bring something in here or there. So we're going to finish up this Mishnah, second chapter, third Mishnah, that again says, beware of rulers before they befriend someone, right? Why are they befriending someone? Only for their own benefit, certainly not doing it for your benefit, right? The good politician, the dead politician, as people would say, because you can't trust anything that they say in general. Because even if they act friendly when it befits them or when it benefits them, but if you need them, guess what? They're nowhere to be found. So we spoke about what's going on now, certainly with this post-election, right, in the U.S. Now, it's interesting. The word over here, it's when it says beware of rulers, right? What is the word for rulers over here? The word is reshut. Or if we would be yeshivas, we'd say reshus. What is reshus literally mean? It means something that someone can do. They're not obligated to do it. In other words, it's okay to do it, right? But it's not necessarily forbidden. But a person shouldn't do it. So there's a hint. There's a hint over here. This is what the word literally means, right? But again, the rabbis take on that it means it's talking about rulers. But over here, it can also mean something that's okay. It's not necessarily forbidden. Nonetheless, it's not a good thing to do, right? It's not something that we should do. So we'd always ask the question, whatever I'm going to do, a person wants to know, is it permissible? Is it forbidden? You have to ask yourself if this is going to have a positive effect on me, on my soul or not, right? So, whatever it is, does this benefit me? Now, we can be confused by the situation. We can think, oh, this is a definite benefit, when the reality is probably isn't, right? We can justify all kinds of things. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be permissible. And certainly, even if it is permissible, doesn't necessarily mean I should do it. So you're going to say, okay, what's the proof? So the Torah tells me, book of Leviticus, chapter 19, verse 2. See, I'm working my way through, the book of Leviticus. I'm actually give this class every Sunday, 9 o'clock in the morning, New York time, 4 o'clock Israel time. So we're sort of working our way through, but getting to chapter 19, probably like getting to the next chapter of Pirkei Avos, next millennium. As we're working our way through, someone once asked me, listen, you're speaking about saras, someone who speaks, God forbid, lashon hara, or they're conceited, they got this spiritual disease that manifested itself in a physical way. People call it leprosy, but they said, how much could you speak about leprosy? How much could you speak about saras and speaking about lashon hara? Well, chapter 13, I probably had about 20 classes, just on chapter 13. Chapter 14, we're getting up to, 7, 8, 9, more than that. I think we're up to more than that. All right, I haven't sent it out yet. Regardless, this verse in in Leviticus chapter 19. When we're going to get there, I can't say, but there's a lot to speak about it. What does the Torah tell me? Torah says, God speaks to Moshe, saying, speak to the entire assembly of the children of Israel. Say to them, you shall be holy, for I am holy. Or for holy am I, Hashem your God. Now, this is a loaded verse. Why is it a loaded verse? First of all, God tells the Jewish people, you have to be holy, right? We don't have any definition of what holy is, right? So, checkmate Coffman over here would say, what does this mean, right? What does it mean to be holy? The Torah says 0. Now, I may think being holy means, now we're getting into winter, right? It's getting cold outside. So holiness would mean that I run outside with a tank top and shorts when it's 20 below, right, Fahrenheit, or, 40 below Celsius, and you roll around in the snow. Why? Because, I want to give my body pain. Well, comes along Chaim, to a blessed memory, the Ramchal as he's known. And he wrote in his epic work, Path of the Just, and he brings this down at the very beginning. And he says, people think if I do this, and I believe in these aesthetics, and I run around in the snow when it's freezing cold, in my tank top and shorts, people are going to say, oh, this person's very holy, right? He's very pious. Comes along the Ramchal, one of the great thinkers of all time, right? And great ethicist, wrote Path of the Just, Derech Hashem, the way of God, all about why God created the world, the purpose of man, reincarnation, purpose of the nations, suffering, all these things. Everyone holds. Everybody learns his works. He said, I beg to differ. You're not a pious individual. You just transgress. Now, he's not going to say this, but I would say this. You just transgress Coffman's 615th commandment. Don't be a moron, right? Someone told me in the States, now you can't make this stuff up. I'm going to get to the definition in a minute. Don't worry. I'm not going to get lost in the parable. But someone had told me people are so desperate to see other people, during lockdown and everything that's going on. So what do? So they get together in people's backyards, right? And, they social distance, whatever, but they want to be able to see other people. We are a social creature, so we want to be around other people. So this person's, so I said, what do you mean? Like in today's weather? It's freezing out, right? He said, don't worry about it. Yeah, we use propane, propane gas heaters, right? They put it outside, lasts for, 8 hours, something like that. So it's nice and toasty outside. So I said, what are you guys, out of your minds? Like being at a football game. I'm not even going to make fun of the CFL. It's like you're at a football game. It's, it's 30 degrees. Right, it's minus 5 degrees Celsius or more. And you're sitting out there, you're freezing. People say,
Green Bay.
Sport, it's the adrenaline. It's all this. So I said, more guts than brains. So this person said, what do you mean more guts than brains? All you have to do is dress the part. You put on your hat, you put on your coat,
layers,
etc. You got your gas heater, nice and toasty out there. What am I missing? I don't know. It's cold out. That doesn't seem like so much fun to me. But I digress, right? So over here, Book of Leviticus, chapter 9, verse 2. Chapter 19, verse 2. God says you have to be holy. You know why? Because I'm holy. Awesome. What does that mean?
Right.
What does holiness mean? Now, someone's going to say, based on aesthetics, I should be like these New York polar bears. What do? In the middle of winter, they go and go swimming in the ocean.
The polar bears swim,
right?
yeah.
Bunch of idiots.
Okay. We do it here in the Pacific Coast, too.
It doesn't make sense to me. I'm not a big fan of the cold, even though I grew up in Boston. It's pretty cold there during the winter. Right? I'm not a big fan of being outside when it's cold. But okay, people want to do that. To me, personally, you can take it for what it's worth. Absolute stupidity. Okay, so it cannot be that I'm going to run around in the snow when it's freezing cold in tank top and a shorts. I'm going to show my aesthetics. Can't mean that. So what does it mean? We don't have a definition. The Torah tells me other things about being holy and this and that. No definition. right? So now if God says to Moshe, I want you to speak to the Jewish people and tell them to be holy. So what does that mean? Holiness is going to have different definition to different people. So
Really?
comes on Rashi. Rashi over here, we have to come on to oral law. We have no choice, right? Because we don't have any definition. We don't have any precedent, right? I can't say, it says holy over here. Must mean like this. So it must mean the same thing over here. It's not true. So what does it mean? So comes along Rashi and he says, what does it mean to be holy? It means to stay away from forbidden relationships. Right? In other words, you have an obligation. A person's married. That's who you stayed married to, unless, God forbid, you get divorced. Right? But you're not allowed to be with anybody else. You're not allowed to touch anybody else. Right? You're not allowed to touch any other woman. Right? So it's not your wife. Right? That is, okay, you tell me it's a rabbinic prohibition. Good. It's still forbidden. Right? So all the more so, you can't be intimate with someone else. That's called adultery. Right? That's what we call adultery in the vernacular. Right? So comes along Rashi. Rashi says, what does it mean to be holy? Stay away from forbidden relationships. Comes along the Ramban. Comes along famous Ramban. Nachmanides over there says no. It doesn't just mean stay away from forbidden relationships. What does it mean to be holy? So the Torah tells me I'm allowed to eat meat. Right? Torah says I'm allowed to drink wine. I'm allowed to, liquor. I can have a pina colada. I can put my feet up on my lounge chair in the summertime, drink my pina colada. Everything's beautiful. But if a person's overweight, and a person's a glutton, and a person's an alcoholic, right? God forbid he drinks too much. The Torah tells me I'm allowed to eat and drink. But the Torah does not tell me, the Torah does not tell me I'm allowed to be a glutton. That I'm allowed to be a drunk. Right? In other words, that which is permissible, I have to know how to use it. Right? So therefore says the Ramban, what does it mean to be holy? To stay away from things that are even permitted. Right? Not to go overboard. So even though the Ramban says that I'm allowed to eat and drink, which 100% is permissible, obviously if it's kosher and no bugs and all this, right? That I'm allowed to do. But if I overdo it, comes along the Ramban and he says, if you do it, you're disgusting in God's eyes. Now, this is a major ethical point, right? We love ethics. That's why we do this every week or almost every week, unless you're out of commission, right? But the idea is that why am I considered disgusting? Right? We had actually a discussion at my Shabbos table earlier. There was a discussion about using timers.
Right.
If a person would use a timer, according to Moshe Feinstein, a blessed memory, I'm only allowed to use a timer to turn on and off lights. I'm not allowed to turn on and off, let's say a air conditioner, right? Or, anything else. So someone asked the question, well, what would happen? Somebody has a TV, God forbid, right? Someone has a big cesspool in their living room, right? They have this cesspool in their living room. What do? They have it go on. On Friday night. They don't change the channels. They keep it on one channel. Big game. They don't want to miss, seventh game of the finals, whatever it is, right? They don't want to miss it. So what do? They have the timer turn it on. Now, if they have the timer turn it on, technically speaking, I didn't do anything, right? In other words, if I have the timer turn on off my light, if I have it turn on and off, my what do you call it? My air conditioner, right? I have it turn off other things. There's nothing wrong with it, right? Again, from Moshe Feinstein, a blessed memory, holds it's only for lights, not for anything else. Other rabbinical authorities hold it's definitely for other things as well. But what about this? Would I be allowed to use the timer for the sake of having my TV, go on? Even better, it's set to DVR. Go watch 4 different things. Look like a fish trying to watch all these different things. Okay, now I'm digressing here, right? So the point is, what would happen if I use my timer for that, right? In other words, I don't change anything else. I don't change the sound. I don't change the channel. right? I leave it on one thing. God forbid I miss something on Shabbos. So what do? So what is the halacha? The halacha is it's permitted. It's permitted with one caveat. What's the caveat? You're considered disgusting in God's eyes. Why are you considered disgusting in God's eyes? One very simple reason, because it's not in the spirit of Shabbos. Right? A person could walk downtown wherever they live, and there are stores that are open, run by non-Jews. Right? Technically speaking, they'd be allowed to window shop. Going in is a problem. Right? But they would be allowed technically to window shop. If you're allowed to window shop, is that have I done anything wrong? Haven't done anything wrong, technically. Right? I'm allowed to think of mundane things on Shabbos. Not the best thing, but I'm allowed to. Right? Therefore, if I stand by a store and I look in the window, I haven't transgressed anything in Shabbos. Problem is, it's considered disgusting in God's eyes. Why? Because the whole purpose of Shabbos is to tune into Him, and the purpose is sanctify the day through prayer, through eating, right? We have 3 meals on the Sabbath, right? Eating, saying words of Torah, singing, all these different things. Then why are you saying, in general, this football game is crucial? This soccer game is crucial. What you're saying is that is more important than Shabbos itself. Now, technically speaking, I haven't done anything wrong. There's zero wrong with what I've done. Right? Same thing. So you're going to say, oh, why is he bringing this up? Because if he eats and he drinks, that's permissible. That 100% is permissible. Problem is, if I overdo it, then that's called being disgusting in God's eyes. So I can have many things that are permissible to do, right? But if I overdo it, even though it's permissible, what can a person answer? A person can say, what do you want from me? You made it permissible. Right? So even if you made it permissible, it doesn't mean I have the right to do it. I don't have the right to go overboard.
Yeah.
But the idea of being holy, says the Ramban, is using things the way God wants them to be used. Now, we could say by being intimate with a person's spouse. Right? Obviously, there are family purity laws. Why? So a person can't be with his wife whenever he wants. Now, what if she's permissible to him? If she's permissible to him, can they be, together as much as they want? Well, the Talmud says you do that, you kill the guy. You pretty much put him out the pasture. It's just, person only has so much strength, right? Regardless of that, the rabbis even say, okay, even if it's permissible, it doesn't give you the right anytime you want. Right? So therefore, these desires, these urges that we have, even if they're permissible, I have to know how to use them. Now, in the secular world, or even by non-Jews, right? Would this apply, since we're speaking to mostly Noahites here, if you're a Jew, get off because it's Shabbos where you are, right? In general, if you're a non-Jew, does this, would this apply? Would this idea apply that would I be considered as a non-Jew disgusting in God's eyes if I overdo what I'm supposed to do? Now again, if you were to ask most secular Jews or non-Jews, what would they tell you? I'm allowed to do this. Okay, so what if I overeat? That's my choice. So what if I overdrink? So what if I do, other things? If it's permissible, right, then we'll get the literalist over here. If it's permissible, it's permissible, right? There should be nothing wrong, right? That's probably what most people would say. Now, other people may say no, only up to a limit, because I understand if I eat too much, it could cause, heart problems, other issues, right? So maybe we'd say, on the other hand, maybe this would apply. So I would say, even if it wouldn't apply, as one of the Noahide laws, as I always say, then it should be definitely a moral imperative. Right? In other words, not saying you can't enjoy life, not saying, you can't enjoy a good steak, a few donuts, especially, during Hanukkah or whatever, right? So who says you can't enjoy? The question is overindulging, right? A person overindulges, that in the long run could be hazardous to your health, right? In different ways. Maybe it is, maybe it's not, right? But in the end, what do we have to do? we have to show some level of control. Comes along Rav Yisrael Salanter, the founder of the Musar movement, of the ethics movement, and he said that when a person eats, even if they're starving, right, and they have a nice plate full of food or whatever it is, they should leave something over, right? Not finish every last crumb, and lick the plate. Why? Right? To show, first of all, that, you're not like an animal. To show that, okay, a person's hungry. I get it. You haven't eaten like in 10 minutes, right? So, a person feels, oh, they're hungry, etc. Leave something over. That's not, there is a prohibition of wasting food, right? We're not talking about leaving half the plate over, right? You leave a little bit over. Why? In order to show, why am I eating? Just to sustain the body, right? It may be good food. I'm not saying not. It's definitely permissible if it is, right? But you leave a little bit over, you show that you're still in control. You show that, my whole purpose in existence and the whole purpose of eating and drinking is to make sure the body can function. Now, does that mean I have to eat bland food? No, we're not on that level. There were some people like that, only ate bland food. They didn't want to get too much benefit in this world, but that's not for us. So the point is, right? The point is that we're allowed to enjoy. And if we're allowed to enjoy, there should be a limit. Should be some limit. Now, most people would tell you that doesn't make any sense. If I'm allowed to eat it, why don't I finish the plate? Why don't I have another plate? Again, not saying a person can't have, another plate of food. What we're saying is you have to take things in within reason. Because then a person just forgets who they are. And, I've seen people, unfortunately, a number of people
shovel
over the years, exactly that, just shovel it in. That's
all
what
you can eat buffet.
Esav comes in,
right,
and Yaakov is mourning his grandfather, making lentils, and he's come in rummaging, pillaging, doing all these things. Feels like he's gonna die. So Yaakov says, "Sell me a birthright." And he's like, "I'm starving. What do I get?" He says, "Sell me a birthright." And he sells it. And then what happens? He gives him to eat, right? But the commentaries tell us he didn't just give him to eat. It's like he set up a funnel in his mouth, one of these like huge funnels.
The red stuff. Give me the red stuff.
And he shoveled it in like the animal that he is, right? So we understand Esav, is greater than Yaakov in many, many ways. But the problem is his heart, his desires destroyed him. That's why his body's not buried in the cave of the patriarchs. It's only his mind. It's only his head. Right? But regardless of that, that's how far desires can go, because a person doesn't stop. They just continue. So the Torah over here says that in order to be clean and pure, right, and separate from the masses who are dirty, in the sense that they are abusing this. So you made a very good point, right? You go somewhere, let's say you're at a fundraiser, whatever, there's a buffet, and you see someone like, God forbid he's missed a meal or something, packs it high up, so what is the mission here saying? You shouldn't sit near such a person, right? Even the person's a good friend of yours. Why? Because what you see has an effect. Now, again, it's permissible to eat. It's not permissible to be a glutton, right? There may be a lot of good food. I heard a great rabbi once say, at a wedding or bar mitzvah, they have these tables. They call it a screaming smorgasbord, right? It's a table with all these different foods. It could be meat, meat, chicken, whatever, desserts. Why they call it a screaming smorgasbord? Because there's so much food on the table screams from the weight of the food. It's a screaming smorgasbord. Now, a person has a fundraiser. How are you going to get people to donate? You have to, it has to be good, right? The food has to be good. You have to entertain. This is what you have to do, right? So over here, the Torah tells me I got to be clean and pure. I got to separate myself from the masses. What do the masses do? The masses are dirty in the sense they are abusing this. So over here, unfortunately, I don't think this is uncommon, right? Someone once told me, and I was looking at different yeshivas to learn, someone told me the first thing you have to do, forget about hearing classes and everything else. if it's a place you're thinking about wanting to go. So this person told me the thing I have to do is I have to go to the cafeteria. I have to go where they eat. And he said, if you can eat with these people, then you can learn with them. He says you have to see how they eat. If they eat like animals, you can't learn there. And again, I haven't, it's not like I've taken a survey. This is, I'm not going to say this is, social science 101 or 101A, right? But, nonetheless, take notice wherever you are and see how people eat, right? I would think there are, I'm not going to say what the percentage is, right? But there definitely are people when they eat, they don't talk, they don't come up for air. They just like shovel it in. I heard once, a great rabbi was dealing with teenagers having difficulties in Judaism, and he asked about his relationship with his father and on Shabbos, and he said, yeah, you know what the most important thing to my father is on Shabbos? Cholent, right? What's cholent? It's a mixture of, beans, barley, potatoes. It's like a stew, right? Why do we eat it? Because the longer you cook it, the better it gets, and we want to show checkmate. We want to show we're not Karaites, because the Karaites say can't kindle a fire, so you have to eat everything that's cold. Can't eat something that's hot, so we eat something that's hot on Shabbos, right, to show that we're not Karaites. That being the case, so this kid says the most important thing to my father is cholent, is eating this stew. So the rabbi looked at it and says, what do you mean? He says, yeah, the cholent comes out, one bowl, second bowl. He doesn't come up for air, right? More important than anything else going on. Now, again, we're not going to say eating cholent is forbidden. It's not forbidden, right? But if a person over here gives in to their desires, even if it's permissible, they're compared to someone who transgresses, that they get enjoyment from time to time, and the pain they cause by giving into these desires, right? Let that sink in. In other words, what we mentioned before, the fact that a person eats and drinks and goes beyond what they're supposed to do, comes along the Torah itself and says you got to be holy, you got to control it. Again, it doesn't mean you have to go hungry, right? But it means you have to control it. You have to use it the right way. We have to give our body what it needs in order to survive, right? You have to eat, you have to drink. Certainly, if you don't drink after a few days, you're going to die, right? That's clear. You die of dehydration, right? No question. Okay, if you don't eat, you can last a few more days, right? But in general, you're allowed to eat and you're allowed to drink, right? Sure. But like anything else, according to the Torah, you have to know how to do it. And again, this is going to seem like a novelty. People are going to think this is the absolutely most absurd thing that they ever heard. But think about the logic, right? In other words, what we're saying is that I'm allowed to eat and drink, right? But the more a person gives into their desires, even if it is permissible, it's much harder to fight against. Tell someone who's got an eating disorder, okay, right, stop eating as much. Well, they have an eating disorder for any number of reasons. But there are people out there that like to eat. They like to eat. So, they don't care how they look. They don't care what it does. They want to give in to that desire. Now, smoking's no different. But smoking, in a certain sense, people enjoy the taste, or even if it's going to kill them. But in the end, I'd say, okay, maybe it is a little bit different, because what are in cigarettes? Nicotine. Nicotine is addictive. It's addictive, right? It's certainly addictive. So therefore, it's hard to give that up. But they've also shown, in different, potato chips, other things, they also put certain chemicals or whatever in it, that you can't just eat one, right? I don't know if you remember, you're probably old enough to remember these old Vlasic, pickle commercials, right? Oh. You can't just eat one, right? You never know where this useless information comes from, but that is the point, right? They put things in there in order that you get addicted, and the fact that you get addicted, you want more, right?
Even so Coca-Cola.
They had this big lawsuit many years ago, right, against the tobacco company, right, for exactly that reason. And they hid the effects and different things, whatever. But the bottom line is they put things in there, 100% that are addictive. right? Now these things, now, okay, so you're going to say that's not in my control, right? I like to eat these things. Okay. Right. We're not saying don't eat them, even though they'll probably kill you in the process. Right. But nonetheless, you have to understand these things can be addictive, just like anything else. And if a person doesn't have it, imagine goes into the store, they got 50,000 different types of, pretzels and potato chips and this, but they don't have yours. They don't have your sour cream and onion. They don't have your barbecue. Person's going to go out of their minds. So someone will say, come on, you're exaggerating. I don't think I'm exaggerating that much. People have this desire. They want certain things and they want it now. And they want it at this time. So therefore, if they want it at that time and it's not there, and, in my language, they have a conniption. They have like a meltdown. Again, you might say, okay, it's an exaggeration. For some people, maybe. Right. But if someone can't get what they want when they want, right, for them, it's going to cause them a tremendous amount of pain. Right. So over here, the idea of doing something when, having something when I want it and overindulging, right? Overindulging means I'm not holy. That's what it means. It means that I need to control. Yeah. I always need to be in control. Now we have desires, right? We're going to see, a mission in Pirkei Avos probably, I don't know, about 15 years, but we're probably going to see it one day down the line that desire and honor destroy a person and can take a person out of this world. Right now, as a prelude, because you're not going to remember this in 15 years, but as a prelude to that, some of the commentaries say over there that we take that literally, that, the Karaites will be happy. That means that if a person gives into their desires too much or to honor too much, that 100% could destroy them, right? Desire, who do we see that by? Good old Uncle Esav, right? Honor, who do we see that by? Korach, right? Korach's jealous of Moshe Rabbeinu. Korach also a tremendously, important individual. He held the Aron, right? He held the Ark of the Covenant, and some people that weren't worthy died because of the holiness. He comes out against Aaron and Moshe, and he wanted to be the high priest, and he's jealous, destroyed him. Not only destroyed him, 250 great people, got destroyed at the same time. So a person should never think, oh, this is never going to affect me, right? Honor, I'll never give into that. Or desire, I'll never get into that. We have precedent, right? We have precedent to people that were so involved, that were, that got so caught up in the whole thing, right? I'll give you a modern day example, right? You take the greatest Ponzi scheme in the history of man, right? Now, he may have had the desire, to want to pay back or whatever, but he got so caught up in the scheme, and he got so caught up in how much money and honor, and people, all these, institutions gave him money, right, in order to make more money, etc. But he got so caught up in the whole thing, he got caught. Now you're going to say, come on, somebody like that obviously understands what he's getting himself into. You're right, right? You can say he was a crook at the beginning. Okay. But even if you want to say that, let's just say for argument's sake, maybe he really wanted to return the money. Maybe. Right? But he got so caught up in the game. And that's what happens. We get so caught up in certain things. That's why the Rabbeinu Yonah says in the Gates of Repentance, Rabbeinu Yonah says there are 4 groups of people that are not going to see God's face, quote unquote, in the next world. Right? One of them are habitual speakers of Lashon Hara. One of them are people that lie. Right? So now I'm going to mention about liars, because one of the things he says over there about liars is the fact that even if a person tells a white lie, right, and he feels bad, he has regret, he has remorse, all these different things, okay. But the more a person does it, the more, he just perpetuates lies, eventually what could happen is this person will never tell the truth.
That's right.
In other words, that's an extreme. but someone gets so used to, to fibbing and, and exaggerating, in other things, it snowballs, right? So therefore, what can happen is the reputation can be ruined, because once they get caught a few different times, what's going to happen? No one's going to trust them.
That's right. 100%.
Right? No one is ever going to trust them. So in this case, everybody trusted Madoff, right? Everybody trusted him. And, a person gets that kind of money, even if he knows what he's doing and investing in everything else, makes them feel good. They honor him, ask him advice, take him out to dinner, all these things. And what can possibly happen? What can possibly happen is you start believing the clippings, but you get carried away. You get carried away in the charade. Now, most people would say, come on, this person was crooked. Other people who do these type of things are crooked, etc. Right? But people lie for all kinds of reasons, right?
They justify it themselves too.
People have agendas. They have something to prove. Speaking Lashon Hara is all about lying. It's not necessarily telling the truth. There is a novelty. It's why it doesn't apply to non-Jews. That if everybody knows something is true, I can't repeat it for no reason. That doesn't make logical sense, right? Because, if I know something to be true, it's all over the internet. It's all in the newspapers, even though most people probably don't read newspapers today. But it's all in the newspapers, and everybody knows for argument's sake it's true. I cannot repeat it for no reason, right? So the whole Chaim there says that's called Lashon Hara. Now, that's why, and one reason it wouldn't apply to non-Jews, because if you ask most non-Jews or most secular Jews, they're going to think you're off your cotton picking head. You say, listen, if I know this to be true, why can't I repeat it? Why can't I repeat it for no reason? Right? So something like that, when it comes to lying, and it comes to these other things, it spirals, right? It spirals. Now, I did say I'm not going to get political, right? And I'm not going to get political, right? But there's divide, right? There's a why am I going to bring this up? Because when you talk about people lying, right? Either something is true, right, or something is not true, right? We speak about lying. A woman can't say I'm partially pregnant. That doesn't exist, right? It's either you are pregnant or you're not pregnant, or as one of my pregnant daughters should be expecting in about a month or so. She always says, we are pregnant, right? My son-in-law say, yeah, we are pregnant. I was like, wow, that'd be impressive if you were, right? But it's we, the English we, right? So if someone is telling a story, someone is giving evidence, right? Someone's giving testimony. I've seen this many times, seen it in a rabbinical court many times. And there's a contradiction in the evidence. Now, if you're sitting there as a bystander, right? Maybe I won't even get into politics, right? Maybe if you're sitting there as a bystander, either this person's telling the truth or this person's telling the truth. Or maybe it's a little bit of both. Maybe they have to meet somewhere in the middle, right? But it can't be both people are telling the truth, right? Somebody obviously has to be lying, right? So there is nothing being in the middle, just like being pregnant. Either it's true, or it's not true. There can be a placebo effect. Someone can have all the symptoms, still not be pregnant. That's also happened, right? Sort of what we call being psychosomatic. It's very rare, right? But a person can feel all the, all the symptoms or whatever, but they're not pregnant. So it's either, in many cases, many cases, I don't want to be, called out here. Many cases are black and white, right? There are a lot of cases that are gray, right? So what we're going to speak about is something that's black and white. So if somebody sees something, somebody witnesses something, they come into a rabbinical court and they say, I saw this. Now, the rabbinical court is going to ask all kinds of questions. Did you see it like this? Did you see it like that? Did you see the other thing? Right? They want to make sure what the person saw, they actually saw. Now, someone else going to say, no, I saw the same thing, but they contradict. No, the person wasn't wearing a blue shirt. It was green. Well, maybe the colorblind, maybe, right? Or maybe he saw it was a woman. It was really a guy, right? They couldn't tell, right? So there's going to be a way there is going to be a way to show that either one person's right or wrong, because there are 7 different ways the Talmud says you ask witnesses, right? In other words, you grill them, in my language. How you saw it, when you saw it, what was the day of the week, what was the day, what month it was, what was the year, what was the person wearing, did he really have a big knife, was it a small, whatever. They go to the end of the earth in order to figure out what the world's going on. Now, so again, either what the person's going to be telling is the absolute truth, or not. But how can someone say you didn't see this? How can that they can't say. They can't say you didn't say this. You didn't see this. Now, someone who's an eyewitness, and they said, okay, now I'm going to get into politics. They said, I saw 100 ballots be over and over and over again, same name. Or I saw other irregularities, right? They got on video what happened in Georgia, right? They got suitcases coming out of underneath the table. No, I didn't see that. What do you mean you didn't see that? What are you, blind? So the answer is they're blind. They don't want to see. Now, you have to say, okay, what's going on here? Let's examine the facts. Where did these ballots come from? Why wasn't there anyone watching over there? Why? I could ask a million questions. So they may want to try and squirm out of it, but you cannot deny, because it's on tape and they saw it, you cannot deny this is what happened, right? So again, even in a rabbinical court or anything else, if somebody sees something, so now you have to determine if it's true, right? Did they see it like this? Did they see it like that? But you can't say they didn't see it, right? Unless you can prove they weren't there, right? Because if someone says, oh, how could you have done, this is an obvious case. They say, how could you have said that you were there? You were with us at the same time. You were somewhere else, right? Those are false witnesses, right? They could be killed for this if they're proven to be false, right? Because they're saying you're lying. You're lying over here because you weren't there. Where were you Friday the 13th? You say you were there. You weren't there because you were with us. So what are you trying to do? You're trying to frame this person. And if they're found out to be false, you give them the same punishment this person was supposed to get. That's how severe it is. So good. If you prove they didn't see it, then that's okay. If they have proof, if they saw it, then you have to prove what they saw. Then you have to say, no, you saw something else. You saw a different person. He had a different color shirt. He had a different knife. He had whatever it is. You have to get to the bottom of what they saw. So this whole thing is a joke when you see what's going on today, because they say they have no evidence. Nobody's saying anything. It hasn't been proven. What do you mean it hasn't been proven? What did they see? What did witness after witness after witness testify? What did they see? They didn't see anything? No, they all made up the same thing. Well, now it comes into question. They're under oath. If they're under oath, it's a lie, right? So now there were certain things going on, and we're not going to, go further in this, but there's certain things going on that eyewitnesses are saying what someone else is saying, totally not true. Totally not true. They say, this thing was never connected to the internet. What are you talking about? They got 5 people who saw it was connected. No, that was just an inner router. Wasn't connected to anywhere else. Where's the IP address? Why is the IP address going berserk? Because it's going to the outside line. Can't deny that. How can you deny that? That's obvious. Somebody is lying. But if you have 5 people saw the same thing, and then someone else comes along and says, no, that's not true. That's totally not true. But they were there. How can you, and according to them, our machines are never connected to the internet. Okay, but it was. So how do you deny that? Right? So when it comes to lying, you need direct evidence. Right? In other words, if it comes to giving testimony, you need direct evidence. And now the question's going to be, is that direct evidence good? Is what they say they're seeing, they're actually seeing? Come on, the rabbis, and say, okay, there are a whole bunch of different criteria of exactly how we're going to look at this thing and verify if what they're telling me is the truth. If I have someone that totally contradicts it, they got to get to the bottom of it. They have to ask them all kinds of questions, right? But they're not saying in general, unless they can prove it, you didn't see that. Because they say, I was there, I saw this person, I saw the knife, I saw the blood. How can you say I wasn't there? Right? That you can't deny. Just like we're recording this, you get upstairs after 120 years. Everyone who has an out-of-body experience says the same thing. They see their life flash before their eyes. So every stupid comment I made about the CFL is going to come up. It's going to come up, right? I can't say, after 120 years, I never said that. God's going to say, really? Go back to Pirkei Avos. December 19th.
Rewind.
It was there. You said it 3 times. No, I didn't. Play the video. It's there. Right? So when we get upstairs, the question is, we can't deny what we did. We can always say, okay, let's try and explain.
Right.
Are you able to explain what you did? Right? And if you can't explain it, and it's 100% forbidden, God's going to judge it however he's going to judge it. But God's not going to say, well, I'm not sure it happened. Because he can't say that because we have evidence. Yeah, question.
Yeah, because today we see so much diversion with perspective. And yet that just is really another way that people use to force a narrative, in the sense that, I love a black and white world in the sense that, yep, this is hot, that's cold. But so many people like to play in that lukewarm area and say it's all about my perspective. We see this, and I don't want to get LGBT or anything like that. The reality is, some of them think they have the right to be something else because they feel this way or that way.
We're not talking about that. We're not talking about
No, but in general, we see it in politics. We see it in everyday. And when I see guile go on, they always have a bent towards perspective rather than the hard, tangible evidence, Rabbi.
So everybody agrees. Nobody disagrees. In this election, there was fraud. Everybody agrees. The question is how much, right? But the perspective of where you're coming from, that's a whole difference. That's a whole difference, right? But the idea, and why I keep harping on this, is because we both have the same eyes to see, right? I was going to write a book of people who came back to Judaism, and why they, and tell their story. So I asked somebody who came back to Judaism at the age of about 35. He had 3 boys and, 3 boys and a girl. And they were all like almost teenagers or whatever. And I asked them, tell me your story and, how you became religious. And he said, the question isn't why I became religious. He said, the question is, why didn't my siblings become religious? Because we saw the same things. Right? In other words, we could see the same thing. I'll give an example. I had somebody, secular Jew, tell me this, that when 4 righteous people in the neighborhood I was learning until this virus came along, where my Rabbi lives, that 4 righteous people were butchered, right? Were absolutely butchered. It was 4 years ago, a few months ago. And they're absolutely butchered. These Arabs came in the middle of prayer, whatever. It was just unbelievable what happened. In short, what did somebody, so these people are absolutely righteous, right? All of them in many different ways, right? The person comes along and says, what a waste of life. In other words, they dedicated themselves, they kept kosher, they kept Shabbos, they kept family purity laws, they might have been very righteous, but why they get gunned down like this? Right? It's a classic question. The classic question why people suffer, right? Why the righteous suffer. Right? But even without going into that, so the absolute chutzpah statement that somebody says, what a waste of life. Okay, we don't understand why these things happen. But if these people are great individuals, how in the, spiritually, and they're working day in and day out to be as great as they can, to teach others, give over God's way, in all this, how can you say it's a waste of life? You may disagree with it. Right? We're not saying that, you have to agree with everything, okay. But if you see the same things, if you witness the same things, how can people look at it in a different way, in a totally different way? Now, again, people argue there's no proof, all your court cases have been thrown out. Yeah, because no one's looked at the information. They're all based on technicality, but, how can 2 people see the exact same thing? and come to two totally different conclusions. And what's the simple answer? Simple answer is because we have free will. And God is not forcing us one way or the other. He gives us the opportunity to go one way or go the other. Now, we're going to get punished if we go the wrong way. That's true. But we're looking at the same thing. So some people are looking at this, and the elections are a good example. Some people have said it's absolute fraud, right? Looks like it's totally rigged. Other people will say, get this guy out of power. And we don't care how you do it. Just get him out of power, move on. Now, there's so many contradictions, different things. We're not even going to go there. The point is, how do you look at the same thing in different ways? If there's a lot of evidence, if there's a lot of affidavits, doesn't matter if it's been rejected by courts. They haven't looked at the information. Some of them are starting to look at the information. But, okay, I understand it's been rejected based on technicalities. They don't have standing, they don't have this, they don't have that, they filed it too late. Whatever it is, but it's not based on the facts. Right? So two people can look at the same thing, come to a totally different, conclusion. How can they come to a totally different conclusion? Exactly what you said. It's perspective. It's what my agenda is. It's what am I getting out of this? So to speak. And when we see that, right, just like history, because I studied history in university, and history is just his story. It's how that story is given over. It's how it plays itself out. But I could look at the same information and come to a totally different conclusion, right? One example, is this idea of a Palestinian people, right? Which we've spoken about quite a bit. The single greatest lie in the history of man next to Christianity, right, is the fact that people think there was this entity, called the Palestinian people. And it's like when the English were there, they stole away the land. And when the Turks were there, they had this whole entity. Not true. We made them into an entity. The UN, right, with our help, with the Israelis' help, made them into an entity. Do they ever exist? Never. Never. You have the Lebanese, you have the Syrians, you have the Jordanians, you have the Egyptians. You never had their own entity. For goodness sakes, Arafat wasn't even living in Israel. He got exiled, right? He was thrown in Lebanon for years, right? They brought him back. They gave him life. They didn't exist, right? So if you know anything about, recent Israeli history, then we bought up the land. People don't like it, too bad. They bought up the land in the late 1800s. People come, etc., whatever the case is. But in the end, there's no claim. They don't have a claim. Why do they have a claim? Forget about we won a defensive war. No one ever gave land back, right, in a defensive war. Regardless of all that, there's no such thing. It doesn't exist. So why does everyone perpetuate the same lie? Why do they all perpetuate the same lie? It's very simple, because they have an agenda, right? They want to show Israel's delegitimization that they don't own the land. So we could say, go back to the first Rashi. In Chumash, Bereshit bara Elokim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. God created the heaven and the earth. Rashi asks, okay, so why didn't the Torah start with the book of Exodus chapter 12, first mitzvah, Rosh Chodesh, the new month? So Rashi says the reason is so the non-Jews don't have a claim that we took the land, because God giveth the land, God take it away, right? God created the world. He has the right to give and take to whoever he wants, right? Whatever nation he wants. Now I would say, what kind of answer is that? The non-Jew's going to say it's not fair. Even if you say God has the right, that land was stolen, right? So what would I say if I was a bully? Come take it back. You guys want it so bad? Come get it. But you don't have it because we have nuclear weapons, right? We have nuclear weapons, right? So you're not coming back. It's miraculous we still have the land, regardless. Regardless. The idea is that has not been proven in any way, shape, or form. None, but they have an agenda. And if you read all the newspapers, you read all the articles, you read everything in academia about the topic, right? What is their goal in the topic? To delegitimize the Jewish people, that they do not own the land of Israel. And it doesn't belong to them. For goodness sakes, even in the Quran, even that moron, Muhammad himself, right? He said it belongs to the Jews. Said it a whole bunch of times. What do you think he was kidding? Even though he was illiterate, what do you think he was kidding? He didn't mean it. He says it doesn't belong to us; it belongs to the Jews. So okay, so what do you do with that? Checkmate. But they don't have a claim; they have an agenda. I agree,
Right.
They have an agenda.
Right.
They absolutely have an agenda. They're perpetuating this lie. Like I said, almost as much as Christianity, right? So not to digress here. You have to look at both sides of the coin. You have to be able to know how to evaluate evidence. Unfortunately, most people do not know how to do that. Most people don't know how to think, right? 1% think, 4% think they think, 95% rather die than think. Nobody thinks. Everybody watches all the, leftist news. They don't hear anything about anything. What's really true. They just perpetuate whatever they want to perpetuate. And they say, oh, this must be true because they're listening to the same garbage. And they're not looking at it, from a truly, open-minded perspective. And so they say, well, you're also not looking at it from an open-minded perspective. You're right. I never claimed to be open-minded, right? What we're claiming is that the Torah is true. And what the rabbis tell us is true, right? So now you have to prove to us that we're not true and that what the rabbis say is garbage, God forbid. And we don't have to listen to them, right? The onus is on you. There's in the book of Exodus, chapter 23, verse 2, it says you have to go after the majority, right? You have to go after the majority for the good, not for the bad, right? Someone says, look, most Jews are Reformed, conservative. Why don't you go after the majority, right? So a non-Jewish king once said to one of the rabbis, see, why don't you go like us? Go like the Christians. We're the majority. So your Torah says you go after the majority, right? So the rabbi answered, you only go after the majority when you have a doubt. By us, we have no doubts that it's true, right? In other words, when you go after the majority, I have 3 pieces of meat, right? On the Torah level, 2 are kosher, 1 isn't, right? So if I pick up one of the pieces of meat, I'm allowed to eat it. Why? Go after the majority. I might be the wrong piece. Doesn't matter. According to the Torah, it's permissible, right? But you only invoke this when I have a doubt. Judaism by us isn't a doubt. If people want to come along and say, I have a different world outlook, I think this and I think Judaism's like this, prove it. Prove it, right? You want to say Judaism is, goes against women. We know that it wasn't for the women, the righteous women in Egypt, we wouldn't have been redeemed, right? We know through Esther, saved the Jewish people in the time of Haman, right? In the book of Esther. Boy, if we were against women, this would be pretty bad, right? God says to Abraham, listen to your wife when she throws out Hagar. And you smile. She's greater than you in prophecy. Boy, that's 3 proofs right there that we treat women the way they should be. Not only that, take it one step further. First group, quote unquote, that protected women, right, through the marriage document, i.e. the ketubah, right? The marriage document. Where'd that start? With us. Women had rights. If God forbid someone got divorced, they had to take care of her, right? When he's married, they had to take care of her, right? Certainly. So where's the proof? Oh, you want to put a 21st century perspective on what the Torah says? Doesn't mean anything, right? We're not going to be dictated by the media. Media doesn't call anything, right? I don't care how much they want to say about, you mentioned, LGBT and rights and this. What do I care what they say, right? Does the Torah say it's forbidden? Yes, it does. Book of Leviticus, chapter 18, right? Rabbinic prohibition. Lesbianism also forbidden, right? Forbidden relationship. No, that doesn't fit my world outlook. I don't care if it fits your world outlook. Is it true, right? Does the Torah tell me or not? So now you're going to say, oh, it's outdated. Oh, it's this. In my language, learn how to debate. That's not a debate. That's not an answer. Right? That's not a question. It doesn't fit your world outlook. So what do I care about your world outlook? What do I care what the media says? Right? The media calls an election. Really? I thought it was the electors. I thought that's what happened. Where the media get off calling an election? Right? Doesn't make sense. But there's an agenda. Right? Everyone has an agenda. But the agenda doesn't mean it's true.
That's right.
It totally doesn't mean it's true. You need to back it up with facts. And what will a lot of people say? I don't care about the facts. This is what is in my heart. This is the cardiac Jew. This is what in my heart. This is what I feel. So, okay. So you want a non-Jewish child, that you have a non-Jewish child, make a blessing and light the Hanukkah menorah. Don't you think it's kind of silly? No, but it's good. They get a feeling of Judaism, but they're not Jewish, right? I just saw someone as a Christian or whatever asked about lighting Hanukkah candles. So I answer very, very simply. If you're a Christian, why are you lighting Hanukkah candles? You want to tell me you're super Noahide, one thing, right? But it doesn't apply to you. Totally doesn't apply. That was my answer. Totally doesn't apply. So why are you doing it? Right? So if this doesn't apply, I don't care if your father's Jewish. It doesn't apply to you. Right? But oh no, they're going to say, they want to give them something. Some feeling of Judaism, make them feel good. Let them eat a bagel. Why are they going to invoke God's name? Right? By doing something that doesn't apply to them. Now you tell me there's no, if they say God's name and they make a mistake or whatever, so we're not going to hold it against them because there's no blaspheming God's name by a non-Jew in general. Right? That wouldn't be the case. Right? So, but again, why are you doing it? So you're going to say, well, this is what I want for them. I want them to feel, Jewish, but they're not. So again, it's an agenda issue. Right? It's, it's like, oh, you're just a stickler for Jewish law. It doesn't make sense. I mean, I understand where they're coming from. Yeah. Right? But if you're going to follow the logic doesn't make sense. Because they're not going to keep anything anyway. So what are you doing? So, maybe they'll learn about it. Maybe this. I don't know. Let them eat a potato pancake. Let them eat their latke. Let them eat a donut. You want to light a menorah? Okay, don't make a blessing on it. Okay, you want to do that? Fine. I'm not going to beat you with a wet noodle. Fine. But, people have an agenda. And my agenda is it right or is it wrong? Are you overstepping the boundaries? What are you giving them? You're giving them a travesty of a mockery of Hashem. Right? So in essence, what you're doing is you're lying to your kid. Right? You're making them feel, you're going to ask them, you would ask this kid, are you Jewish? They're going to say yes. Right? Even though their father's only Jewish. Why are they going to say that? Because that's what they feel. Because, they have that. Maybe they don't have anything else. Maybe they have both. But they feel more Jewish. Okay. Feeling more Jewish doesn't mean anything. It totally doesn't mean anything. Right? So, when it comes to evidence, do not argue if you don't have evidence. Don't tell me what your heart tells you. What your heart tells you, no offense, I could care less. You could all drop dead. Doesn't matter. What your heart says is irrelevant. On the ground, is it true? Do I have sources for or against? And if I don't, then your agenda doesn't matter. But you know what? Most people are going to tell you it's what I feel. You can't tell me what I feel or not. You're right. You're 100% right. I can't say either way. What I can say is that's not a way to argue, right? And that's not a way to prove what you're doing is right. Because if someone says, I'm just going to do it, this is what I feel, okay? But that has nothing to do whether it's true or it's not true. You're just saying, I'm going to do this, but I don't want to be inconvenienced. I don't want to be like you. I don't want to be one of these black hat fanatics. I'm not going to be like you. Okay, you don't have to be like me, right? But you have to be true to yourself, right? You have to be true to Judaism. And if you're not true to Judaism, then, and I'm not going to take what you say that seriously because you're not giving any arguments. You're just, you're telling what your gut feeling tells you, but your gut feeling is misleading. It's misleading because you have biases. You totally have biases. And if you have biases, you're not going to look at the truth. Because if you look at the truth and you see that your life's a travesty of mockery of Hashem, it's over. Yeah. How are you going to change? Your wife isn't Jewish. Your kids aren't Jewish. What are you going to do? You're going to lose everything. And you're going to realize that your life that you've lived up until this point.
The sham, yeah.
It's a sham, right? 100% it's a sham. So that is pretty much the third Mishnah. I mean, there is a lot. There is a lot, to talk about this. The bottom line here is that person has to be careful of their desires. And if you're not careful about your desires, you don't hold them in check, then it spirals. It can totally spiral out of control.
Away from holiness.
And it can spoil out, it can spiral out of control, especially by what we eat, because So we mentioned before, there are things, chemicals in different things we eat that are addictive, right? You're not just going to eat one plastic pickle, right? They are addictive, and it might be permissible, but, that's how they get you to eat it. So curbing desires, regardless of what the secular world says, is not a bad thing, right? It shows that you control your body, not the other way around. Now, if you look at the rest of the world, their body and their desires control them. I don't think there's any question about that. They just give in. They say, this is who I am, it's what I do, and that's it. And they give in. Now, I'm not saying we don't necessarily give in to our desires also, right? We're our own worst enemy. We also have to control that. But, we have to understand. We have to understand what's behind it. Because people say, oh, you can't do this, you can't do that. Yeah, there are checks and balances. God doesn't want us to be gluttons. God doesn't want us to be alcoholics. He wants you to live according to his will, but you have to know how. That's why he gave us instructions, right? So therefore, to be holy means I'm curbing desire, right? Otherwise, you're going to come up with another definition of holiness. And again, people could say, live in an ashram, live in a cave, do these other things where I'm going to show all my aesthetics. I'm going to run around in the snow, with a tank top and shorts, and that's what I'm going to do, right? But obviously, that's not what holiness means. Certainly not according to Rashi. Certainly not according to the Ramban. So that is that's the third Mishnah. I think that'd be good to start the fourth Mishnah. Yeah, we're actually going to get on to fourth Mishnah here. Says the Mishnah used to say, treat his will as if it were your will, your own will, i.e. God's will, right? So that he will treat your will as if it was his will. Nullify your will before his will, so nullify the will of others before your will. Now, this is a loaded statement as well. And simple explanation is that if we do what God wants, according to the guidelines of the Torah, in other words, we do what he says, then we're doing his will. Right? Now, people will say, oh, we're anti-pig, we're anti-non-Jews, we're anti all kinds of things. The Torah tells me what I'm allowed to do, what I'm not allowed to do, what the rabbis tell us, and all that. So if I'm doing God's will, then he's going to treat you as if you're doing his will. And you have to nullify yourself before him. Right? In other words, you have to do what he says. It doesn't matter what you think. It doesn't matter if you think, you know what, if I take away the mother bird, I push away the mother bird and I take the eggs, the person thinks that's cruel, right? Obviously, you're a heretic if you say so. But you're nullifying your will before God. Nullifying your will means even though I don't understand what the Torah says, right? I don't understand it fully. I still have an obligation to keep it, right? 100%, I have an obligation to keep it. And not only that, the Mishnah says that if you nullify your will before his, even if you get made fun of, right? Even if people give you a hard time, right? But you're saying, listen, there's juxtaposition of the verse where Torah tells me I have to keep Shabbos, and the Torah tells me I have to honor my parents, right? Torah tells me I have to honor my parents and then keep Shabbos. So what's the juxtaposition of the verse? Juxtaposition of the verse is that Rashi says that I have to keep the Sabbath, even if my parents would say, a person's parents would say, I want you to desecrate Shabbos, you're not obligated to listen to them. Your parents will say, hey, according to you, doesn't it say in 10 Commandments, got to honor your parents? You're right. But if you tell me to break the law, God's law, you're out. I don't have to listen to them. You got to be respectful, right? But you don't have an obligation to, certainly don't have an obligation to listen. It's forbidden, right? It's forbidden to listen. Now, you could get yelled at. You could get screamed at. There are all kinds of negative repercussions that could happen, right? And, I've had people tell me all kinds of things, and this is discriminatory, and this is this, and this is that. Again,
they're not hearing the whole of the
I hate to be the burden of bad news, but the Torah says what you're doing is forbidden. You want to say the Torah's wrong? Prove it. But, I'm going and saying what God says. You want to eat shrimp? Torah says you're not allowed to. You want to eat pig? Torah says you're not allowed to. This is not my interpretation. right? The Karaites are going to be jumping up and down. This is what the Torah tells me, right? So in other words, nullification of your will could come at a price, right? Could certainly come at a price. But what does the end of the Mishnah say? That he will nullify the will of others before your will.
Right.
In other words, God himself is going to knock other people off, so to speak, because you're willing to nullify yourself in front of him. Right? I have to see further what that means, but that is.
No, this is
That I would say is simple explanation, but it needs clarification. Now, one example or one explanation over here is that if you treat his will as your own will, right? What's it referring to? It means you should spend money on spiritual things according to your means, really according to what you can afford. And you're going to spend according to whatever you can afford. Why are you doing it? For the sake of God, right? You buy a lulav, an esrog. You should spend whatever you can afford to spend, but you want to beautify a mitzvah, right? You have phylacteries, tefillin, whatever you want to call them, right? You want to make sure they're kosher. You want to beautify the mitzvah, right? So in other words, you should use money for holy purposes, not just for frivolous things. You should give generously for mitzvahs. Now, even if a person is very successful, in business, does that mean they can't have a nice house? They can have a nice house, right? We're not saying not. You can't be ostentatious, right? If you're going to drive a car, I'm not saying necessarily, you can't have a nice car, but, there's a difference between that and spending, $200,000 on a Ferrari, right? Or a Lamborghini. Or,
I don't think you get one for $200,000 anymore.
Or a Humvee or something, whatever it is, a person can enjoy life, but, there's a limit. There's a limit. The majority of a person's money, I would say, should say the majority, whatever. You still, you have to live, but whatever a person can give, it should be done for mitzvahs. And whatever mitzvah a person does, as we mentioned, you beautify it to the best of your ability. So in that case, the first explanation is when you do this, you're doing God's will. This is what God wants, right? He doesn't want you to go in debt for a nice Hanukkah menorah, right? You want to buy a nice Hanukkah menorah, good, but within your means, right? You don't want to go outside your means. That's one explanation. And again, beautifying the mitzvah. What does it mean, right? It means not only am I doing it for the sake of heaven, but I'm doing it with a good heart, with a big heart. I want to do this. It's enjoyable, even though I'm forking money over for this menorah or for this lulav. But I'm doing it the enjoyment because I want to beautify the mitzvah. Right. Second explanation is don't do a mitzvah with anger or with a broken heart, right? That might be more my Hasidic side coming out. You should do it with great joy. So a person's going to do what God wants, and that will be his will, right? But if you do it, let's say a person gives charity. So even though a person has the means to give, and he's inundated, we've spoken about this before, he's inundated with solicitors. One Sunday, every hour, people coming left and right, et cetera. And the person doesn't have any life, right? Doesn't have any life. So he says, here, just take the money and go away. Here, go away, right? You lose the mitzvah because you do it in anger. It's not just you get a C- in the mitzvah. You get an F, you don't do it. You didn't do it, right? You lose it. So sometimes, sometimes God will do what a person wants, and he'll give in to that person's desire, even though it might not be something that God wants the person to do.
Wow.
But what's he going to do?
You got me thinking, Rabbi.
He's gonna punish you, right? Meaning that I may think that in one of the blessings of the Shemona Esrei, silent meditation, whatever you want to call it, in prayer, is we ask for livelihood. Now we always ask, I don't have enough, whatever, God, you should help me, etc. And a person will say, God, just let me win the lottery, right? Famous joke. Guy prays 3 times a day, let me win the lottery, let me win the lottery. Finally the angels get fed up and they say, God, just let him win the lottery. Why don't you let him win the lottery? Said, I'm also sick of this guy's prayers. But what can I do? He never bought a ticket.
I'm sorry.
He didn't buy a ticket. He said, I want to push away. He said, I want to give this guy all the money. But what can I do? He never bought a ticket. You got to put your best foot forward, right? So now we may think, give me the blessing of wealth. I'll know how to use it. Right now, if you can Google this, if a person wants to see, anyone who's ever won the lottery. I'm not gonna say everybody, but a lot of people have won the lottery, won tens of millions of dollars. Their life was ruined, right? Most people that won the lottery, their life got ruined. This person, that person, they end up going into debt, right? In the end, they end up going into debt. You see this, as well by pro boxers, you see that by athletes, other athletes. They make all this money. By the end of their life, they have nothing, right? Ask Mike Tyson how much money he's got left. Blew all of it, most of it. Same thing by others, right? I'm not just going to use him as an example. Plenty of others. Bad investments, give a lot of money to family, different things. So a person thinks, oh, I know better. God, I want this. So God says, you know what? This is not going to be better for you, but I'm going to give in. I'm going to give it to you. So what does God do? So he gives a person wealth. So now, if a person's given wealth, what's he supposed to do with it? Supposed to help others. Supposed to be philanthropic, right? Because God gave it to him for a purpose, not just to buy 5 Lamborghinis, and some tigers and other things, and 4 houses.
A tiger. Who needs a tiger?
Yeah, so Mike Tyson had a tiger. He had a pet tiger or something, if I remember correctly. See, that part of my brain still works well. In either case, people waste it, right? But if God gave you the money, right? If God gave you the money as a way to invest it properly, and you didn't, what happens is going to destroy you. Why? Because if he gave you this gift, he may not take away your life. He may certainly take away the money, but he could also take away your life. Because I saw brought down somewhere, I don't remember the exact source, so you can't hammer me here, but I did see brought down somewhere that 1 in 1,000 rich people go to heaven. 1 in 1,000. Why 1 in 1,000? Because they don't use the money for the right thing. And if God gives someone that kind of money for whatever reason, they misappropriate it or they don't use it for the right thing, they're held tremendously accountable. So therefore, what do we say over here? If a person gives with a broken heart, right? You're not going to get married. You should do it with great joy. But sometimes now, this is what we explain. Sometimes the person will do what God wants, or God will do what the person wants. And let's say better, God's going to do what a person wants with anger in order to punish them. In other words, the person wants this, he wants the other thing. God says, fine. It's really a bad thing for you, but I'm going to let you do it, and then I'm going to slaughter you. Why? Because you deserve to be slaughtered over here, right? He may give a person everything he wants. Now, let's give an example, right? Everyone asks the question, why the righteous people suffer, right? Why do evil people have it easy? So one of the reasons evil people have it easy, because God has to reward an evil person with the one mitzvah he did in this world, right? You take a mafioso, right? He was so nice to his mother, right? But he killed people. So what does God do? He gives him power, fame, right? He gives him all these different things. And he has to reward him in this world for the one mitzvah he did. Or the 2 mitzvahs, otherwise it wouldn't be fair. But why is he going to reward him here? Because God's going to spit him out in the next world. When they die, they die. Nothing happens. Right? My language, they go poof. Right? They don't have a portion of the world to come. So you're going to ask, so why does evil people have it easy? Because God gives them what they want. He has to reward them for the mitzvah that they've done, whatever the mitzvah is. And then he's going to flatten them like a pancake in the next world, right? They're not going to have anything. So therefore, God will do what a person wants with anger. Okay, fine. You want to spit in my face 98%, 99% of the time? Fine, I'll give you what you want, and then I'm going to flatten you like a pancake. So this means over here, if we're doing our will, i.e. me, myself, and I, Sybil complex, we're doing our will. That's not called God's will. In other words, he can give us everything. Fame, money, only to wipe us out. Right? So now, if we're doing our will, remember, we spoke about the cardiac Jew. Right? I'm doing what I want, what I think, what my agenda is. Well, guess what? I would probably say 100% of the time that's not God's agenda. Right. So I don't care what the agenda is. It's irrelevant. The fact you're doing your will does not mean you're doing God's will. Right? So what do we say at the beginning here? Right? Treat his will as if it was your own will, not the other way around. I'm not treating my will as if it's God's will.
Exactly.
Right? That's not Torah made in America or Canada or anything else. Right? What it means is I'm going to do what I want, and maybe I'll put some verses next to it to show it's true. Right? Maybe I'll show some proofs why it's not a bad thing. Right? But in the end, I'm trying to fit, quote unquote, my world outlook into Torah. That's going to be an impossibility.
Right.
That is never going to happen. And the reason it's never going to happen because it's going to go against what God wants. Because your agenda, like we said before, not to overkill, your agenda is not going to come in terms with God. It's just not. Everything you're going to want to do is probably forbidden. Doesn't matter how you justify it, right? It's probably going to be forbidden. Comes along the famous Arizal, Rabbi the glory of blessed memory, said that where did he get the greatest epiphany, the greatest understanding? Remember, wrote an unbelievable commentary on the Zohar, right? Unbelievable knowledge. He died relatively young, right? In his early 30s, I think, or 29, maybe at 29. But I mean, unbelievable what he knew, and what he was able to fathom. And the famous Arizal said that how did he get the greatest understanding? How is it possible he received this great understanding, right, of the secrets of the hidden Torah? Because he served God with great joy. Right? We say this every day. It's part of our prayers. We say that, we serve God, we should serve God with great joy. Right? The question is going to be, so, okay, if you're a religious Jew, if you're an Orthodox Jew, why do you see, maybe you might see on the street, a lot of people don't smile. A lot of people just sort of look, I don't know, upset, maybe. Right? So, why is that? Don't we have to be Hasidic over here and, sing a little bit more, dance a little bit more? Show me a whistling Dixie. We have air, we have water, we have food, we have a roof over our head, all these things. We should be unbelievably thankful. The problem is we get beaten down in life. Life beats us down. Hey, why don't we have those potato chips? What happened to those potato chips? We get beaten down in life, right? And what's going on today? Small businesses, others getting destroyed.
Yep.
Getting absolutely destroyed because of this virus. It's just unbelievable. Back. And, there's no question people have suffered. But in the end, what am I living for? Okay, you have to put bread on the table, right? Okay, we have to put our best foot forward, right? That there's no question. But the problem is when we have difficulty, it doesn't matter why. It could be with a spouse, could be with livelihood, could be with all kinds of things. What happened to serving God with great joy? So if you have a fat bank account, like you're working as a property manager, you got a fat bank account. Sorry, that slipped. A person's got a fat bank account. You don't pray as well. You think it's the work of my hand. That's what you think. You don't think it's because God's given it to you, right? Which we've spoken about a lot. So therefore, a person like that's not going to pray as well. Maybe it's not going to pray at all, right? When's the time that they pray? No atheists in a foxhole. When's a person pray? When the chips are down. Because I've had people tell me, not religious, they say, listen, they found a spot in my lung. I want you to pray for me. Right? When the chips are down, the chips are down, that's when they can become religious. When everything's going good, well, another joke, a person, has his appointment, if he's not there, right? If he's not there, they're not going to see him, and it's a pretty important, pretty important appointment. And, he's got like 10 minutes to go, 5 minutes to go, and he's driving around looking for a parking spot. He's like, God, help me find a parking spot. I need to be in this place. If not, I can't go, and whatever. And all of a sudden, someone pulls out, right? Someone pulls out and says, God, never mind, I found it. I found the space. It's okay. I don't need your help anymore.
Never mind. I got one.
Never mind. It was good. Thanks.
Yeah.
So, okay. Yeah. That's a joke. But when, if someone if someone, God forbid, is going in for a PET scan, or a CAT scan, let's say, and they found, they found something. And now you're going through this test to see what it is. You're going to pray like it's no tomorrow, because obviously no one wants to get sick. Nobody wants to die, God forbid. And, they're going to be the most religious person at that point. Why? Because the outcome could be pretty bad. So, it's interesting. Someone will say, well, I'm a true atheist and it doesn't really matter or whatever. But when the chips are down, they'll do all kinds of things, right? If the chips are down. So, in general, there is no such thing really as an atheist, but that's not really the topic for now. Yeah, question.
Well, I know you're mentioning about you get a scan, and I just wanted to find this 1 second. Oh, here it is. All right. I don't know if you can see this, Rabbi. You probably can't, but I'm showing it on the screen. Okay. You can't see it, but this is a scan of my brain from September 15th this year. Okay. Now, when I first did repentance, when I was young, all right, and I did share this on Tanakh Talk, I fell off a cliff 240 feet, but I've been living with this for a lot of years, and this is something that is starting to become an issue. Okay. And I say to myself, should I be pressing in harder, doing more? I can't move any faster. I've been doing so many broadcasts for the last few years steady. But here's what they discovered in September 15th. Needless to say, I have to go next month back for a lot more MRI scans. And it's like, Hashem, all my days before one of them ever began. And I'm joyful to actually be able to, spend time in these classes with you. I don't know what tomorrow's going to bring, but something like that happens. Do I dive in and pray harder? Do I get stressed out over it? I say, oh God, what do I do? What do I do? No, I just, and even if my rabbi asks me to do something that makes me seem like my left hand is my right hand, I'm not sure. I trust him. So keep sharing the Torah.
At the end of the day, anything that goes wrong, health is a good example, is that we take so many things for granted and we only realize what we have when we don't have it. It's a sad phenomenon. It's definitely a sad phenomenon, but I think it's very true. That if things are going good, health-wise, livelihood-wise, I mean, not every, life isn't perfect, but if everything's going good, I certainly don't pray the same way. I don't think there's any question. That CAT scan comes back with issues, or, I just had a cousin that, lost a lot of weight over the last, I don't know, however long, and, just got diagnosed with, I don't know, I guess, whatever, sometimes cancer. It's not pancreatic. I mean, it's there, but didn't start there. So supposedly that's, I guess, a better type to get. I don't know, going to take out part of his pancreas, part of his spleen or something. I guess they're connected. I don't know. My science is like, knee bone connected to the shin bone. That's about it for me. So, this came out of the blue. Came absolutely out of the blue. Now, you hear pancreatic cancer, like, that's it. It's kiss of death. Alex Trebek got it. He died a few months after, whatever, however long. But that's only if it started there, right? And he was already at the fourth stage. Right. So they say if you get it at the very beginning, you get it, you nail it at the very beginning, there's a very high success rate of survival. Okay. Now something like that turns your whole life upside down. Right. You have to go for tests, and you might have to go for chemo. You're going to have this operation. You're not in your own hands. Right. And I'll make this challenge to anyone. Nobody, and I mentioned, I can mention a few stories, right? But nobody in this world is in control of anything. They may think they are when it comes to livelihood, when it comes to other things, right? The famous 100%. Story with the doctor couldn't even control his own bowel movement, right? So a person, if I drank my, another cup of tea, I say, okay, in 30, in 25 minutes, 10 seconds, I'm gonna have to go to the bathroom, right? Who are you to say such a thing? You don't know. It could happen in 5 minutes. I can say, wait, gotta go. It could happen. We're not in control. We're not in control of anything. And people think I control my own destiny. I control this. I control that. Now, it is true, which we mentioned many times before. You have to put your best foot forward. You have to work hard, and you have to, you have to strive. We do have free will, right? But if you think about it a little bit deeper, how free is that will? How really free is that will? Do I have a choice who my parents are? No. Do I have a choice who my siblings are? No. Do I have a choice? I have a choice of the socioeconomic situation is. No. Right? So when I get older and you do certain things, okay, you think you're in control. But, as people, before 2008, when the real estate market was going bananas, all of a sudden things got shut down like that.
Boom.
Right? And whatever, people may have predicted it, whatever, because of all these fake mortgages, in different things, people lost their shirts. Right? People have only started to recover because prices started to go up. Right? But someone wanted to convert, they can't move because their house just got devaluated, or their apartment, or whatever. Right? Wow. So now, if you didn't see it coming, you're going to say, I'm in control? You're not in control. Right? You could say, well, my parnasa, my livelihood's not going as well. They'll say, it's because of your advertising. It's because of this. It's because of that. Now, you can make tweaks, different things, may be successful, may not be successful, right? It's something that was successful, may not be successful later. My wife is, does marketing for people, online marketing, does Facebook ads. That's her specialty. So during this last month or so, certain things that worked before don't work now, right? Certain ads that were like, getting unbelievable results dried up, right? You got to tweak it. You got to this. And there are a number of reasons possibly why, because of the election and, all kinds of, people flooding Facebook for different things, the holiday season there, whatever. But, something that may work now doesn't guarantee for the future. Now, you might think I didn't change anything. I don't have to tweak anything. I'm using the exact same thing, same pixel, same landing page, all these different things. Why isn't it going? What's the deal with this target audience? Yeah. Right? So you can say, well, it's a blip on the screen, maybe, right? But it shows what works today doesn't necessarily work tomorrow. In theory, it should. So, okay, you can tweak it, change the background, right? Change the color, change a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and see where it goes. But you know what? If God doesn't want you to get it, it doesn't matter what you do, right? We can say that, okay, it could happen because of this, because of that. The client doesn't want to hear it. The client wants to know, why aren't they getting traffic, right? That's what the client wants to know. Okay, right? It's not a perfect science, because there are many things, especially, just use this as an example, just in marketing, it can all be because of the color. People say, I don't like this color, and it resonates in a certain way, they don't click on, right? It could be one word you change makes all the difference. Mm-hmm. But how are you going to know that? You have to tweak it. Now, if you had now, in theory, I would say, if you had an ad that was bringing in a lot of people are seeing it, people are clicking through, people are getting more clients and all that, and say, I'm going to use the same ad, I'm going to continue it. At some point, it's going to fizzle out, right? Unless you're putting more money in, it's getting more wide range view, but it's not going to last forever, right? Okay, so may have to do different things, whatever. But it just shows, especially what's going on today, it shows that something that worked today doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work tomorrow. Now, in theory, if it worked today, it should work tomorrow.
Guarantees. Everybody wants guarantees.
Right. So in real estate, no guarantees, right? The market could be up, the market could be down. What did I learn when I was involved in real estate? You can ask whatever price you want, right? But you have to know what things sold for, right? What is the real value? How do I know what the real value is? So you look at the last 3 months, right? You look at the MLS and you see what things have sold for. You don't go by what you think. We don't care what you think in general, right? You go by what's sold for. That's the criteria, right? You want to ask for more? Okay, right? What do they say in real estate? You can ask whatever you want, right? But it doesn't mean you're going to get it.
That's right.
Right? So, you have to be within certain parameters. But even, okay, I changed this, I changed that, I changed the other thing. God can say, I still don't like it. And I'm still gonna make you squirm. It's not based on us. That's what people make the mistake. It's not based on, it's certainly not based on us. Right? So therefore, we want to say beyond the shadow of a doubt, we're in control. Right? But we're not. Someone gets, God forbid, this example with my cousin. This goes back to the idea that a person thinks, I'm going to die at a ripe old age. Nothing's going to happen. And nobody knows.
No.
Nobody knows. We're not in control. Right? You get a growth, it's over. Right? Have someone get a brain tumor. I'm not saying every time a person gets a brain tumor, they die. Right? A person has an aneurysm. Right? I know a story. Someone had an aneurysm, got up after it, survived. I know someone else, that was it. They had an aneurysm. One thing went wrong, boom. Right? So if two people have the exact same thing, no matter what their age and everything else, two people have the same thing. Why does one person get up and another person doesn't? Why is that? Because God said, I want this person to die. This person deserves to die. Right? So, we're not in control. Right? That's the bottom line. So what do people say? They'll say, even if I'm not really in control, I'm going to do what I want anyway. Right? Eat, drink, and marry, lest tomorrow I die. So enjoy life. Whatever happens, happens. Comes along Avos the Rabbi Nosson. Says in the Avos the Rabbi Nosson that he brings from King David, that it says in Chronicles 1, chapter 29, verse 14. Says King David, who am I? What is my people that we should muster the strength to donate in this manner? Everything is from you, and from you we've given, from God he's given to us. Right? So what is King David saying? King David's giving us advice, very good advice, that we should overcome our nature to do God's will, also with what he gave us. In other words, God gave us money. God gave us possession. Even though the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, which we'll see again probably another 15 years, right? It says, Marbid nechosim marbid daiga. Person has a lot of property. He's going to be totally worried about it. Why is he going to be worried about it? How am I going to keep it? How am I going to, how am I going to make more money? Right? So it causes a lot of problems. People say, I'd love to have that problems, but we showed before, probably not such a good idea, right? In general, because you don't know how to control it in general. So God has given these things. He's given us possessions. He's given us money and possessions as collateral. Why collateral? So that we can use it for the right purpose.
For the right purpose.
In other words, I should use it for Torah. I should use it for mitzvahs. I should use it to help build up other Noahide communities. For people to have their own communities, right? To have their own learning so they don't have to do everything virtually. So they have something in their own hometown, not so easy to do, right? But in general, it has to be used for the right reason. If it's not used for the right reason, what can happen? It can be taken away. Because in other words, why is God going to give it to you? Now, again, we see people that just because they can shoot a basketball or throw a football, why in the world are they making $20 million a year? Doesn't make sense, right? It's I don't know.
$1 million arm, 10-cent head.
Obviously, God wants, these people to have money, right? I just saw, someone sent me someone to sign a contract for like $220 million. That's like insane.
They're getting out of hand, yeah.
It's insane. They're going to say, it's not their value, it's this, whatever, right? But the point is, if God wants someone to have a lot of money, they can invent stupid things, the pet rock and other things we mentioned, and what are they going to use it for? In other words, this money that they're being given, that's their olam haba. That's their portion in the world to come. Because if they don't use it right, God wasted it on them. He probably knows he wasted it on them. They're never going to do anything. They're going to spit in his face and he's going to destroy them. Because they didn't use it. They didn't use it in the right way. So therefore, if we're given things in abundance, what should we use it for? Spiritual things. Doesn't mean we can't live, right? But you have to know what to use it for, right? So again, it means we support Torah, that we support communities. We help build communities. We help spread God's light to the Jews, to the non-Jews, right, etc. We have the ability to be partners with God, right, to help him carry out his wishes, right, by helping others. But if he's going to, you can look at it in a little bit different way, in the sense that you see that the UJA, United Jewish Appeal, or the UJC, right, in America, they raise like almost $500 million a year. Charity.
A lot of money.
And that's a lot of money, and most of it is wasted. They build a lot of trees in Israel, give a lot of money to gays and lesbians. I mean, even if they give 5-6% to education, the education's a waste. They're not giving it to real education, right? It's a total waste, right? So why does God give them all this money? Why does God give, these big synagogues, all kinds of money to Reform and conservative Jews? One very simple reason. He says, here's $1 billion, scram. I don't want you to pray. I'm not interested in what you have to say. I'm going to give you all the money just like the snake. Snake's given all kinds of food. Doesn't have to pray for anything because God cut off his legs. God says, you're going to be cursed. Where's the curse? Where's the curse over here? The curse is he has no connection to God. Right? So a person's wealthy or they're doing very well. What does God do? He says, fine, I'm going to give you all this money. I don't want to hear from you. I'm not interested in hearing from you. So if we have the ability to give, we should give to the right thing. We never, ever want to give to the wrong thing. And if a person had the opportunity to give to, a Jewish cause, a proper Jewish cause, and they don't, they're going to be held liable. Imagine a relative that raised more than $100 million for a non-Jewish charity, not her own money, right? I mean, she was wealthy in her own right and helped raise more than $100 million. Now, this money went to a non-Jewish cause. Now, I'm not going to say this non-Jewish cause was, a totally bad cause. Probably get some credit. For, giving money to charity. If it's a bogus charity, okay, it's something else. But let's say for argument's sake, it's good charity, right, etc. So imagine there are more than 1,000 people, at a funeral. Now imagine the soul is there. The soul hears everything, right, before it goes up to judgment. So imagine the soul hears all these accolades. They hear all these accolades about the, the great charity that they gave and all this. Now they understand what the real world is, the world of truth. And now they're being buried, literally. They're being buried by these, by these people praising them by saying, look at all the good they did. Look at all the charity they gave, whatever. So let's say a lot of that charity, not considered like giving charity. Let's say they could have given it to, Jewish orphans, Jewish needy brides. They could have given it to Torah institutions. I mean, $100 million, $130 million. That's a lot of bread. That's a lot of bread over here. Wasted, in my opinion. Right? So imagine the pain that soul, no one now understands what absolute truth is. So now understand the possible pain that they're going through. And, and they're being praised. And that praise is like taking a knife and just carving them apart. It's like carving their soul apart. The embarrassment, I can't even imagine. So you ask the $1 million questions, why God give them this much money? Why do you allow her to raise so much money? So my answer is, I don't know. But there was an opportunity. There was an opportunity to potentially use it for the right thing. They chose not to use it for the right thing. That's it.
How do they
then it's gonna be held against them in a major way. They're gonna, God can easily say, and I'm not, playing God here. I don't have the glasses or the beard or the mustache, whatever, right? But God can easily say, didn't you know you had a relative? Probably gonna help you give money, proper money to, to real institutions, so to speak. Okay, you chose not to. That's definitely not your choice. But imagine what $120 million bills looks like. And God just used that to smack their soul. Left, right, 120 million times. Imagine that one aspect of hell in general is this idea of being embarrassed. I don't know how a spiritual soul gets embarrassed, right, in the next world. I can only imagine if someone's ever been caught with their hand in the cookie jar or doing something wrong, whatever it is, and they get caught red-handed. regardless of whether you try and answer up what you're doing and everything else, what's going to happen is you're going to be totally embarrassed. Totally embarrassed over here means that, it is a level of atonement, in a certain way. But that embarrassment you don't want. We're going to get embarrassed in the next world. I don't think there's any question at some level, right? But in general, we want to minimize, as much as possible. Imagine, in a person's life, the greatest embarrassment that they ever felt. Now multiply that by infinity. You multiply that by infinity, that's what a person will feel in the next world. So, it's a scary thought. We're all going to have to go through it, right? At some level. And we said before, you're not going to be able to disagree with what you've done because everything like we're doing now is being recorded. So since it's being recorded, we have to answer up why we did it. If we don't have a good answer, bam, right? There's punishment, there's payback. So, according to that, what I have to do in this world is use whatever I have for the sake of heaven, right? I have to pray properly. I have to make blessings properly if it applies to a Jew, right? There are many things I'm obligated to do, even in ethics, right? Plenty of things I'm obligated to do, and we certainly want to minimize, God forbid, what a person could be punished for, in the next world. So if we're given abundance, we're given the ability to help others, then what happens if we don't? Or what happens if we help the wrong people? Right. Everyone will say, well, you got people that are give to charity, whatever, but doesn't, what about family? Doesn't charity start at home? For us, charity definitely starts at home. We're not necessarily looking at the bigger picture. We want to help Jews, and that makes sense. Right? So, that's prejudice. Not prejudice. Everyone helps their own, right? Every nation will help their own. They're not going to help others before they help their own. I mean, if they do, that's misguided, right? That's totally misguided. But when we say help our own, if, a person's giving to this charity, that charity, etc. And what if they have a poor cousin? Okay, we're not saying that they're drug addicts or other things. They've fallen on hard times. Why'd you help them? Oh, you don't understand. They don't give me proper honor. They don't this. Why should I help them? They don't help themselves. Now, again, we're not talking whether they have addictions to something. They're going under hard times, COVID. Business went under, or it's going under, whatever. And you have the ability to help them. So you can make an excuse why you're not helping them. But if you're helping others, doesn't it mean I should help those close to me first? I should. I know someone who's got a claim, against family members. They went under many years ago. Could be got bad business advice, whatever it was, and they were left holding the bag. Now, I don't know what they necessarily expected, people in the family to do, but there was no one to talk to. It's like, oh, bad luck. Sorry. And lost their shirt, right? So this person's been rip-roaring mad for years, right? Makes sense, but obviously if you're going to live that way, totally not healthy, right? And I definitely understand what's behind it, but even what's behind it, person has to realize, if you had a Torah outlook, then you would understand this is what God wanted you to do. He suckered you in, right? In this case, person had a franchise. It was a non-kosher franchise, talking about a Jew, had a non-kosher franchise, got bad advice to open up another store, another franchise. So what happened? That other store didn't do as well and took down both. And then they went under. So he got bad advice. You got bad advice, got left holding the bag. So he's mad, right? Now, makes sense. Makes sense, but how long are you going to be mad for?
Right.
If every psychologist would say, just get out of your system. Understand that, this is not how your family deals with things. And move on, right? And you have to move on. Anyone's about tshuva or Noahide certainly will understand, when they make the transition and they change, family's going to think you're an absolute fruitcake. They're going to make you out to be a pariah. Most likely. Right. If they band around and they help you or, whatever. Okay. But most likely you're going to get pushed out. Most likely they're going to make fun of you. They're going to say you're going to fry in hell forever. all these different things. So usually family, friends are going to go by the wayside. It's a lonely process in general. For Noahides, it's worse because there's no communities and do things virtually and no ritual. Other things, they have it much worse, right? But Bali Tshuva don't have it much different, even though they have the greater Jewish community. So their friends and who they meet and whatever, they're going to be more like their family, right? But it can be lonely because you want to share things with family and you can't. They think you're a fruitcake. They'll make you into a pariah. But again, let's get back to what we said before. They'll make you into a pariah without knowing the facts. They'll just say you're crazy, you're this, but show me where it's wrong, right? We're not going to get into that. We're not going to get into that whole argument, right? But in the end, a person has to realize if family comes along, it's a bonus. But I would say, as I've been taught over and over again, and that is expect nothing, and whatever you get is a bonus. Now that's I would say it's a pretty bad way of looking at things, right? But you shouldn't expect that much. Why shouldn't I expect that much? Because, again, people have biases. They're going to say, what? I believed in JC for 50 years. You're going to tell me it's a lie? You're going to tell me, the whole thing's been a lie? Yes. But what I'm going to fry in hell forever? Oh, good question. That's the hardest thing to give up. I understand. It could be a very lonely process. But in the end, we have to do what's right. We have to do for the sake of heaven. And we will benefit. We will become stronger because of this, because obviously, we understand what absolute truth is, right? And once we see that, even if it's a lonely process, I would venture to say, isn't it better than where you were before? Right? Most people would agree. But again, it takes it takes a lot of time to process the information, right? And a person can second guess many, many times. Why am I doing this?
It happens.
Right? I'm getting hammered on all sides, and it's lonely, and I live in the middle of nowhere, and no one seems to want to help me. And I feel like I'm just out there. But you have to have a little bit of chip in your shoulder and understand this is the absolute word of God. This is absolutely true. It may be lonely. It may be hard. Right? But think of where you were before. Right? A person should be whistling Dixie. They say, wow, I can't believe, all these years wasted. My own life, I came to the conclusion that either the whole world is cracked or I have to go see a shrink. Right? And it could be I still have to see a shrink. But in general, that was my outlook. Because I saw things in the secular world didn't make sense rationally. Totally didn't make sense. And the fact that it didn't make sense made me question a whole bunch of things. But once I started learning Torah the right way, in the proper way, I said, this is it. All my questions in so many ways got answered like that. Now, some of them were because God said it, right? But when you look a little bit deeper and you understand how everything fits together, that's a different thing, right? That's a whole different thing. Now, does that mean the process was easy? Oh no. It doesn't mean a person comes to the realization God gives you everything on a platter, right? Someone comes to Torah mitzvahs, let's say as a Jew, they can lose their living. They can lose their parnasa, their livelihood. Parents can turn against them. Siblings can turn against them. There are all kinds of things that could go on. Look at Abraham. Came to God, whether it's 3 or 40, whatever it was. All the other people were idol worshipers. They want to beat him up, give him a hard time. And, he was very charismatic, convinced a lot to convert, him and his wife. So what did God give him? Give him all kinds of trials. Unbelievable trials. Famine, wife is taken, he had to fight the 5 world powers, save his nephew, circumcision, save the best for last. All these different things. God says, Abe, what do you think about my covenant? Unbelievable covenant. Right? But he didn't give him everything on a platter. Because he said, if I gave everything on a platter, God's saying, then everyone's going to want to join. I'm not interested in that. I want the cream of the crop. I want the people you're going to start. The Jewish people. I want you. I want your kids. I want the cream of the crop. And it doesn't mean I'm going to make it easy for them. Look at Jewish history. We shouldn't even be here. Right? All you have to do is go through the Babylonian exile, the Romans, the Greeks, right? Just got through Hanukkah, and then everything that happened after that, right? Even after the Greeks and the
World
Romans,
War II.
we shouldn't be here. Forget World War II. Forget about what happened in Europe, and everything else. Just based on what happened in Babylonia, the Babylonian exile, that's it. Should have been decimated, right? The Romans, the Greeks, we still kept coming back. Doesn't make sense rationally, right? Certainly not. But, in the end, I have to be true. This is what we're talking about. We have to be true to what is true, to what God wants from us. Now, does that mean what God wants from us, he's going to make it easy? He's not going to make it easy. And I can tell you from personal experience, I have not had anything handed to me on a platter. I mean, I had it easier, when I had a lot more money. Certain things were much easier. Very true, right? But, even after all that, even when I had money, didn't mean things were easy. Not by any stretch. You read my ebook. I didn't even go to half the things what happened. Because if I do that, I expose certain people, and I'm not going to do that, or put out my dirty laundry, in general. But there have been things that you just, even though you're sticking up for Torah, you're sticking up for God. I can tell you, it's like taking a sledgehammer. In my own life, that's what it was like. It's like, still going on to a certain extent, but it's like being taken a sledgehammer and getting smacked and smacked and smacked. And a person could ask the question, I'm willing to sacrifice. I'm giving the ultimate sacrifice. Turn your back on family, friends, other things. Not when I look back on it, I don't think, I lost that much. But instead, in general, it's not going to be handed to you on a platter. Whether you're a Jew, whether you're a non-Jew and you're a wannabe, right? You're a Jew in training, I would say, a JIT, right? A Jew in training, or you're a Noahide. You're gonna pay certain prices, right? But the question you're gonna be is, do you want fantasy or you want truth? Bingo. And if you want truth, understand God's not gonna lay it out on a platter for you. But what he will do, as the Talmud says, if you want to go in the right direction, God's gonna put, really true, right? Deep down, you want to go in the right direction, God's going to help you. If you want to go in the wrong direction, God's not going to stop you, right? So I've heard many people say that, I was searching, and boom, you sent me an email, you sent me a text, I found you this way, or, not just me, other things, came in contact with Rabbi Singer, or Rabbi Skobach, or, whatever it is, because they wanted truth. Now, if you were to ask them after the fact, and now they see what the truth is, and now they've changed their mindset, right? Ask all these people, Jews included, did God give it to you on a platter? He didn't give it to you on a platter. He could have made your life a lot more difficult. You could have said it would have been easier if I didn't come into this. That's true. You might, again, it's not going to be 100% easier in any case, right? But a person asked the question, I sacrifice, right? What does the Mishnah say here? The Mishnah says, treat his will as if it's your will. You have to nullify your will before his will. The Mishnah does not say, my interpretation, take it for what it's worth. The Mishnah does not say, I'm going to make your life great. I'm going to give you fame. I'm going to give you everything. Doesn't say that. He says, you nullify your will to him. He's going to nullify others before you. But it doesn't say your life's going to be easy. People make that mistake. Oh, you think, you're going to be religious and everything's going to be easy. Think again, right? Think again, because God doesn't have to do that. Because if he did that, we wouldn't have free will. Oh, be a religious Jew, everything's easy. Not true. That's definitely not true. People wanting to become Jewish, and they're saying they want to put their kids in Jewish institutions, cost them mint. How do people do this? I said that's the single biggest problem. Besides moving to a community, right? That is the single biggest problem, for that. So, I get it. But if someone wants to go in the right direction, their heart has to be pure, right? This will be the message as we're running down here, that the heart has to be pure. You have to want it. You have to want it like King Solomon says in Proverbs. You have to want it like diamonds, like gold, but it has to be true. Because if it's true, God, at some point, if it's really true, and God will test you, but if it's really true, God will put people in your way in order for you to get to the truth. Now, he may also put people in your way to try and stop you, to see how true that is. Ask any convert. They go through all kinds of hell, right? Going through the conversion process. Some easier, some not. But they think, okay, now I finally come to this conclusion, it should be a lot easier. Hell no. Less than 20% who start the process actually finish. Ask any Noahide how easy they have it. Have them call all these Orthodox rabbis and say, I want to come to synagogue. I want to do this. No one's opening the doors. Very few people are opening the doors.
That's right.
Right? So, at the end of the day, you cannot think, well, they owe it to me. I had someone tell me this. We're out of time. I'm not going to go through that story. They owe it to me. What do we owe you? You're coming to us, to our community. You're not going to go to a Muslim and say, well, I'm interested in conversion, but, this halal thing, I'm not doing it. I'm eating pig. They're going to kill you anyway. You say to a Christian, you're not putting any water on me to convert. I'm not going to a swimming pool. I'm not going to the beach. Nothing. They're going to say, you don't have a right to open your mouth. You're coming to us. Right? But people cop an attitude. And the bottom line is, if you want to do the right thing, God will help you. If it's a fake, you'll just continue yourself in the wrong path. And you'll spiral out of control and you'll never find it because you're not looking in the right path. Now, it took me a while to find the right path, but I found it. But eventually I find it. I found it and I'm not turning back because I know it's the right path. Right? There's no question. But that right path, and I'm going to tell everybody, that right path is going to come at a price.
Always.
You are going to pay a price, but the thing you're going to have to ask yourself is the price worth it? And I will tell you, with all the prices I paid, regardless of what I've gone through, 100% it's worth it. I would have wanted things to turn out differently in different ways. Okay, that didn't happen, right? But my faith and my belief didn't change because I didn't get the ice cream. I didn't get the cherry on top. But you know what my cherry on top was? My cherry on top was the fact that I have a connection, one of the Torah giants of the generation, more than 20 years, right? So that was the bone I was fed, right? And that you can't take away for anything, right? That is, okay, but I had to suffer like a dog in the process, as well. So, again, is it worth it? No pain, no gain. It's worth it, right? There's no question, but you can't worry about what other people are going to say, what other people are going to do. You have to be true to the one living God. That's what you have to do. And God's going to help you in so many different ways. It doesn't necessarily mean, the pave is going to be the road is going to be paved with gold, right? That's not what it means. Spiritually, yes. In physical terms, the Talmud says, you're not going to inherit both worlds. Person's not going to be a tremendous rabbinic scholar and have money at the same time. Usually doesn't go, right? But again, I have to put my best foot forward and I have to live it. And regardless of what happens, I'm still going to pray tomorrow, right? I'm still going to do as many mitzvahs as I can because I know God's the one in charge and I have to work hard, right? That's the message.
Backing it up, Rabbi, right to the very beginning of today's class, you were getting into holiness. And I think just what you just closed out with, it's what holiness is. You got to go through that, don't you? Everything you've gone through. You wouldn't be a degree of holiness like you explained to us at the beginning.
No, but 100%,
you didn't go through.
I wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't go through the suffering I went through. No question. But if you were to ask, would I sign up for that? No.
Oh, no.
Nobody would sign up for it, even though we say in our prayers every day, don't bring me to, such a situation where you're going to suffer, but you don't grow if you don't suffer.
That's right.
Right. It's a catch-22. Right. But again, there are people that would say, I'm so glad I went through it because that's who I am. It made me who I am. And some people would say, it doesn't matter. I still would have wanted to go through it. I'm not sure everybody would say that. If we understood what the suffering did and it takes away transgression and all that, we'd sign up, but we don't want it. Nobody wants it. Right. But that's the Torah philosophy. The more I suffer, we're not the suffering servant of JC, for sure not. Right. We're not born to suffer, but it takes away a lot of sin. And in the next world, we're going to say, oh, I could have suffered more. And look what I could have atoned for. Nobody wants it. But nobody wants it. Imagine, I went with this thought. Imagine, a person has to watch reruns of the CFL. And you're going to say, oh, if I would have done
What do you think
that,
they've been showing this year up in Canada?
if I would have done that, I would have had a straight path to Olam Haba. A straight path to the next world. Forget about the Argonauts, right? Forget about them, right? I would have had a straight path. You know, okay, we're digressing here. I would have had an absolute straight path. But that's what it is. That's essentially what it is. But when a person suffers in this world, you know, even if a person suffers, God forbid, with a deadly disease, and they would say, you know what, God, give me more punishment and more punishment and more punishment so I can come to you squeaky clean like, you know, like the tells of Mordechai Pogramansky, a blessed memory, right? He's dying of cancer, and he puts his finger up, and he says, God, give me all the pain now, because I'm coming straight to you clean and pure. Do whatever you want to my body. We're not holding it. Right? But he lived less than 100 years ago. Less than 100 years ago. We're not talking about 250, 500 years ago. So you're going to say, this was an unbelievable Jew. You're right. We're not holding there. Right? But he wasn't that far away. So even when a person suffers, and a person says it's going to atone for my sins, that's what it does. But if a person suffers and they don't say it atones for their sins, and then it's just suffering. They're not getting the atonement over here. Right? Which is a whole nother thing we're not going to get into. Right? But the fact that he said, I'm coming to you pure. Do whatever you want to my body, because my body doesn't mean anything. My body's just a physical thing, but my soul is what lives on forever. And my soul is going to continue straight to you in Gan Eden. Straight to you in paradise. It's an unbelievable story.
Oh, man. Beautiful. Well, I think we better wind it down because I got to get ready for my next class. But Rabbi, you know, sadly, I'm on call next week, and so I can't broadcast next week. So okay. Hashem willing, are we okay in a couple of weeks? We'll play it by ear.
It definitely sounds like a plan. I'll be around. I hope.
I'm on call for 5 days because everybody I work with all celebrates that, and so somebody's got to work.
Ho ho ho!
I get to do it. Anyways,
yeah.
so
I'll tell you one funny story. There were these Hasidim, you know, I don't know, whatever they were doing at a mall, you know, and they see Santa running around. So they ask the father, hey, what Hasidus is he part of? They say, what type of Hasid is he? You know, he's got the red thing. And whatever, say, hey, what type of Hasid is he? No, wrong religion, you know?
Oh, on that note, we're gonna close it down, folks. We hope to see you in 2 weeks. I won't be here next week because I'm on call. So, Rabbi Coffman, thank you. Beautiful, beautiful message today. Have a wonderful, wonderful day, folks.